My biggest fear, really only fear for Nintendo's next generation console, is that it'll be boring in comparison to Nintendo Switch. Luckily, these past few months or so, what many would describe as filler leading up to its reveal, have made me confident that I have nothing to worry about. And here's why. The first of Nintendo's offbeat announcements that started this trend, I feel, is Alarmo. And with that distinction, I think it establishes a few things we can glean from where I think their head's at going into this next generation. For one, this is a modern, straightforward, yet unique take on pre-existing technology. I'll say, this is the one thing I'm talking about today that I am not personally interested in owning or engaging with. However, I am impressed by it. It's just not a product that fits into my life personally. The motion tracking being the primary way to engage with the clock is very interesting to me though. It seems like an obvious feature, but I've never seen a similar product, certainly not at this price point, and that says a lot to me personally. And it's confirmation of something Miyamoto said in an interview with Time magazine not too long ago, where he said, "We will continue to use new technology to create new ways to play, but rather than simply making more games for a predefined platform, our job is to continue to create new platforms that enable us to create fun new ways to play." I think they accomplished this with Alarmo, and they did it in a way that's true to how modern Nintendo sees themselves. For years, they maintained that Nintendo is a toy company, but now they have expanded on that by saying they're an entertainment company. And with this new distinction has come a much wider scope for the types of projects they work on. Ultimately, all of these projects still have the goal of getting more people invested in playing Nintendo games, but the way they achieve this goal has become a lot more layered. Before, Nintendo's strategy was simply making good games. Now, Nintendo's strategy is about getting more people to care about their worlds and characters outside of the context of video games. And to be clear, still making good games, they just want people to associate more than just playing specifically video games with their IP. And it's for that reason Alarmo exists. Now, personally, I don't know if that'll lead to some sort of negative association in this instance, something like growing to hate a song tied to an alarm or ringtone, but the point still stands that this product is very clearly meant to have people go to sleep and wake up thinking about Nintendo's IP, and that can be very powerful. Secondarily, it's interesting to me that Alarmo's launch prioritized current Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack subscribers, and it's because this is something I've felt they needed to do more of since the original NSO launch, so I was personally happy to see it done a bit here. Contrary to popular belief, and despite its use being tied to Switch online multiplayer's efficacy on Nintendo's platforms has nothing to do with NSO as a service. It's not an ISP. What it is a loyalty program. Its primary purpose is to incentivize and reward investment in Nintendo's ecosystem. This is why the actual flagship offering is the Switch Online library of games, not the ability to play online multiplayer. Make no mistake, it being tied to the service as an incentive is solely because that's the industry standard, not because it actively is enabled by the service. Games that run poorly online are developer specific. Games that run well are the same. Some games run well and are made by Nintendo. Others don't and are made by Nintendo. And the same is true for third parties of various sizes. And that's true on literally every platform with online play. I have a PlayStation and I have laggy matches and games on it as often as I do on Switch. The same is true for my Xbox and even Steam Deck with the holy grail scenario of server-based rollback connectivity. That's why when attempting to improve the service of Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo introduces features, services, and rewards that usually have little to nothing to do with online multiplayer. The keyword here is usually, and this flows nicely into the next big peculiar development to come out of Nintendo during this time period: their Switch Online closed beta test. Now, I'm not interested in poking the bear and going super in depth on what that test ended up actually being, and I certainly won't be showing any footage of it. That said, I will discuss it broadly by saying the actual contents of the test mattered less than, I think, the functionality that enabled its gameplay. In other words, it was a test that I think will be used internally across not just one project that may or may not have similar gameplay to what was showcased during that demo, but rather it'll likely facilitate several more ambitious online multiplayer multiplayer experiences from within Nintendo. Again, like I mentioned, this isn't because Nintendo needs to specifically stress test a magical Switch Online ISP upgrade. It's to help Nintendo understand how to make these kinds of games in the first place. Not too dissimilar to how Xenoblade Chronicles X was the framework for what ended up becoming The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, or how Nintendo used games like Yoshi's Crafted World, or more recently Princess Peach Showtime to prime their devs on the software of Unreal Engine. So much of what they do informs what they will do, and it's another reason I think these announcements are telling for what we'll see with their next platform. I can see a world where Nintendo prioritizes online play in a way they never have before in an effort to further center NSO as a service. At present, they're the only major player in the space that isn't all but defined by their online service, and I think this will change with the coming generation. In fact, they all but confirmed as much in their latest earnings report Q&A when they cited the reason for the year-over-year decrease in NSO subs being a lack of titles that take advantage of the subscription. I think this generation is a strong contender for a Pokemon MMO that will use the learnings from this playtest. I think this test will play a big role in whatever Mario Kart does next, Splatoon, Animal Crossing, and more. I think we'll see more third parties commit to bringing their games to Nintendo's next platform, not only because many of them are still supporting last generation consoles from Sony and Microsoft, platforms that will likely be outclassed by Nintendo's next thing, but also because of this increased investment in online multiplayer on Nintendo's end internally. And this, again, isn't due to improved tech on the networking end, but rather it's due to Nintendo fans mostly buying Nintendo games, and the third parties that do tend to see success are the ones that align with where Nintendo is at the time. So, assuming Nintendo does increase their investment in creating online experiences, that would simultaneously pave the way for other studios to invest more in doing the same for Nintendo's audience, thereby improving the overall experience of online multiplayer games, because developers will make sure that their games run well online on the platform now that they know people will play them. Is this making sense? And of course, while most things I feel the general gaming audience assumes is bottlenecked by Nintendo Switch are inaccurate, it's true that the increase in horsepower will play a major role in developers investing in creating online games for Nintendo fans that are more in line with what their offerings are on other platforms as well. Nintendo Music, I think, is the most promising of these recent announcements, not in the sense that it's particularly interesting or ambitious on its own, but rather because it's the realization of Nintendo better utilizing their IP in a way that's similar to something fans have wanted them to do for a long time. Like, sure, Nintendo could have just added their music to DSPs, but that doesn't serve them really at all. Why relinquish as much potential revenue and, more importantly for them, control over the experience? There's of course potential for a corporation as big as Nintendo to negotiate special rates, but assuming they get standard rates, this is the revenue per listen on major DSPs. Now compare that with Nintendo Music, where they are requiring users to subscribe to Switch Online to gain access, which not only guarantees at least $10 to $40 per year of revenue from each user, it also thrusts them into their ecosystem, which affords Nintendo a potential long-term relationship with those consumers. And on a functional level, they have the ability to include more bespoke features like extensions. They have more control over playlisting for the character-specific playlist that they have in the app. And most importantly, it can interface with each individual user's Switch account to fuel recommendations even further. All of that said, to be blunt, this stuff is cool and the app is a good idea with decent enough execution, but the most interesting and exciting aspect of Nintendo Music is the potential for similar projects coming to light. On Twitter, I mentioned offhand when Nintendo Music came out that they should do Netflix next as a joke, but genuinely, imagine all of Nintendo's shows throughout the years being added to something like this. All of the Pokemon TV shows, short series, movies, and potentially more new shows and movies that are being worked on by Nintendo's recently established Nintendo Pictures subsidiary. On that note, Nintendo Systems is literally a subsidiary that Nintendo co-founded with DNA to, and I quote, strengthen the digitalization of Nintendo's business, research and develop, as well as create value-added services to further reinforce Nintendo's relationship with consumers. That to me says Nintendo Nintendo will be using their current IP, products, and services to create additional products and services. I think we will see a lot of these happen in the near future to further support Nintendo Switch's successor. I have to assume Nintendo will be ramping up their marketing for Switch's successor in January 2025. And the reason for that is this month isn't ideal for obvious reasons, and because they will want to have a final big push for Switch in the strongest part of the year financially. And I think December may have a tease or an announcement for the actual reveal, but December's mostly a ghost town as people have off for the holidays. In the interim, I think there's a pretty strong chance that we do see more announcements that are similar to the ones that I talked about here. And certainly after we actually get the reveal, we will see more Alarmo type products that fans will be encouraged to engage with Nintendo's IP and products that expand past gaming. They will be weird, but I assume that they will ultimately make sense in execution. In other words, I can't imagine something like the long discussed vitality sensor being a part of this, as that's not something I can see most people getting actual use out of, but instead it'll be products that put unique spins on things people already need and use regularly. I think we'll see a ton of games from Nintendo and their roster of third-party partners, which Nintendo confirmed will see growth on Nintendo Switch's successor as well, will follow suit. In other words, I am more confident now that GTA 6 will come to Nintendo Switch's follow-up. And I think the rumored Pokemon MMO is more likely than ever. And I mentioned I can see Nintendo having their own video streaming service already, but I don't think it'll be the only app that's similar to Nintendo Music in any way. I'm just not quite sure what it will be yet. And I think all of these projects will directly influence Nintendo's next console's feature set, potentially even form factor in some way. I'm excited to see how. Thank you to Redirect's first ever executive producer, Trev L. Steinberg, and all of these other great names you see scrolling on the screen for keeping this channel afloat. Remember to check out shop.watch Redirect to join them in the credits and in receiving whatever other perks interest you that are listed on the site. Most importantly, if you watched this far, you must be looking forward to talking about the future of Nintendo. Be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to see all the videos I'm making about their next generation console, games, and other announcements. Okay, that's it for me. See you in the next video.